My sister called me at 2 a.m. Mom's cancer treatment costs $40,000. Insurance won't cover it. I emptied my savings account. 2 days later, I saw Mom at the mall buying designer handbags. There was never any cancer. I called Adult Protective Services, reported elder abuse, and had Mom's finances investigated. They found $85,000 in hidden accounts. I, 32M, emptied my savings for Mom's cancer treatment. Found her at the mall 2 days later buying designer bags. There was never any cancer. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. My sister's voice was shaking, breaking between words, and I sat up in bed immediately because I'd never heard her sound like that before. She told me Mom had stage 3 cancer. Lymphoma. Aggressive. The treatment would cost $40,000 and insurance had denied coverage due to some technicality she didn't fully understand. She was crying, asking if I could help, saying she'd already maxed out her credit cards and taken a loan against her car. I didn't hesitate. I told her I'd handle it. I'd been saving for years to buy a house, living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment while banking every extra dollar. $43,000 sat in that account, accumulated through overtime shifts, skipped vacations, and a lifestyle that prioritized future security over present comfort. But this was Mom. You don't hesitate when it's cancer. The next morning, I drove to the bank before work. The teller processed the withdrawal while I sat there feeling simultaneously terrified and purposeful. This was what savings were actually for, I told myself. Not granite countertops or a second bathroom, but life and death. Real crisis. I transferred the money to my sister's account by noon, then called Mom. She sounded weak on the phone. Tired. She thanked me, said she didn't deserve a son like me, that she'd pay me back somehow. Her voice had this fragile quality I'd never heard before, and it made my chest tight. I told her not to worry about the money, to focus on getting better. We'd figure everything else out later. I worked a double shift that day to keep my mind occupied. Came home exhausted, ate cold pizzas standing over the sink, and fell asleep telling myself I'd done the right thing. 2 days later, I needed to pick up a birthday gift for my girlfriend. There was a mall across town that had the specific store she liked, so I drove over after work on Thursday evening. The place was busy, people flowing between stores with shopping bags and coffee cups. I was heading toward the escalator when I saw her. Mom, standing outside a Gucci store, laughing with the sales associate, holding up a handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked vibrant, healthy. Her hair was done, makeup perfect, wearing an outfit I'd never seen before. Designer, by the look of it. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, just watching, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were showing me. Then she turned slightly, and I saw her profile clearly. No mistake. That was definitely my mother. The woman who'd sounded like she was knocking on death's door 48 hours ago, now examining luxury handbags with the energy of someone celebrating a lottery win. Something cold settled in my stomach. I walked closer, staying behind a pillar, watching as she completed the purchase. The sales associate carefully wrapped the bag in tissue paper, placed it in a branded shopping bag with rope handles. Mom paid with a credit card, chatting animatedly the whole time. I followed her through the mall. She hit 3 more stores, bought shoes at Nordstrom, stopped at Sephora, and emerged with a bag full of cosmetics. Got herself a latte at an overpriced coffee place and sat at a table scrolling through her phone, looking utterly content and completely healthy. I felt like I was going to vomit. My hands were shaking. I left the mall without buying anything, sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to breathe normally, then drove home and called my sister. She answered cheerfully. I asked her how Mom was doing. She said the first treatment had gone well. Mom was resting at home, staying positive. The doctors were encouraged. I asked which hospital. She named one across town. I asked what oncologist. She gave me a name I couldn't verify in the moment. Then I told her I'd seen Mom at the mall, shopping, looking completely fine. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then my sister laughed, this forced, brittle sound, and said I must have seen someone who looked like Mom. She was at home resting. I was probably stressed and confused. I wasn't confused. I told her exactly what Mom had been wearing, described the Gucci bag, mentioned the specific stores she'd visited. The laughter died. My sister's voice went flat, and she said she had to go, hung up before I could respond. I sat on my couch staring at the wall. My savings account was empty. My house was gone, not just delayed but gone, because starting over would take years. And my mother, who I believed was fighting for her life, had spent the last 2 days shopping like she'd won the lottery. The anger came slowly, building from that cold place in my stomach until my whole body felt hot and tight. I'd been played. They'd looked me in the eye, manufactured tears and terror, and stolen $40,000 from me. My own mother and sister. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I started digging. First, I called the hospital my sister had named, asked to confirm an appointment for my mother under her full name. They had no record of her as a patient. Not in oncology. Not anywhere. I called 2 other major hospitals in the area. Same result. I checked the oncologist's name my sister had given me. He existed, but when I called his office and explained I needed to verify treatment for a family member, the receptionist told me they couldn't confirm or deny patients but suggested I have my mother sign a release form. I said I would, knowing I'd never get one. Then I did something I'm not proud of but don't regret. I drove to Mom's house at 3 in the morning and let myself in with the spare key she'd given me years ago. She was asleep upstairs. I went to her home office, a converted bedroom where she kept her desk and filing cabinet. I found the shopping bags first. 4 of them, stuffed in her closet, tags still attached to some items. Thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. In her desk drawer, I found bank statements she'd printed out, probably to track her accounts since she wasn't great with computers. The statements showed balances I couldn't believe. One account had $63,000. Another had $22,000. My mother, who'd been pleading poverty for years, who'd asked me and my sister for help with various expenses over the past decade, who'd claimed she was barely scraping by on Social Security and a small pension, had $85,000 in liquid savings. I photographed everything with my phone. The statements, the shopping bags, the receipts I found in her purse. Then I left, locked the door behind me, and drove home as sunrise started bleeding across the horizon. I didn't confront her. Not directly. Instead, I spent the next day making calls. I reported the situation to Adult Protective Services. Told them I believed my mother was being financially exploited or was potentially showing signs of cognitive decline that were affecting her judgment and truthfulness. I mentioned the fake cancer diagnosis, the request for $40,000, the hidden accounts. The intake coordinator took detailed notes and said they'd open an investigation. Then I called the insurance company that supposedly denied coverage. I filed a fraud report, explaining that someone had potentially used my mother's identity to submit false claims or had fabricated a denial of coverage to solicit money. They took it seriously. I also contacted a lawyer, explained the situation. He told me that while what my mother and sister did was definitely fraud, proving it criminally would be difficult without them explicitly admitting the cancer was fake. But he could help me pursue civil action to recover the funds. I retained him. My sister called that evening. She was screaming. Mom had been contacted by APS. They were asking questions, looking into her finances. What had I done? How could I attack my own mother like this? I was tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. I asked her one question. Did Mom have cancer or not? She couldn't answer. The line went quiet. Then she said it was complicated, the diagnosis was uncertain. They'd been exploring treatment options. I told her I'd seen the bank statements. I knew about the money. I'd reported everything to the appropriate authorities and hired a lawyer. She hung up. Mom called 2 hours later. She wasn't yelling. She sounded tired again, but different this time. Calculated tired, not sick tired. She asked what I wanted. If this was about the money, she'd pay me back. We didn't need to involve outsiders in family business. I told her I wanted the truth. All of it. She was quiet for a long time. Then she admitted there was no cancer. There never had been. She'd had some medical tests done months ago, routine stuff, and one result came back slightly abnormal. Not cancer, just something that needed monitoring. She'd mentioned it to my sister, and my sister had suggested they could use it to solve some financial problems. What financial problems? I asked. You have $85,000 in savings. She got defensive then, said that money was hers, her security, her retirement. She'd worked for it, but she had expenses I didn't understand. Home repairs, medical costs for things insurance didn't cover. She'd made some bad investments and needed to replenish her accounts. My sister had credit card debt that was crushing her. They'd planned to pay me back once they'd stabilized their situations. So you lied about cancer to steal $40,000 from me? I said. She didn't like that word. Steal. She said I was being dramatic. It was a loan. Family helped family. She'd helped me plenty over the years. I asked her for examples. She couldn't provide any that amounted to even a fraction of $40,000. The APS investigation moved forward. They interviewed Mom extensively, looked at her financial records, talked to her doctor, who confirmed there was no cancer diagnosis, never had been. They determined she was competent and not being exploited by others, but they flagged the situation as potential financial fraud against family members and referred it to law enforcement. My sister avoided me completely, blocked my number, but I heard through extended family that she was panicking, afraid she'd face criminal charges. Mom, meanwhile, hired a lawyer of her own. The whole thing exploded across our extended family. Aunts and uncles took sides. Some thought I was being vindictive, that family should handle things privately. Others were horrified by what Mom and my sister had done. Holiday gatherings became impossible. The family fractured along fault lines I hadn't known existed. Mom's lawyer reached out to mine. They wanted to settle. Mom would return the $40,000 plus interest. In exchange, I'd sign an agreement not to pursue criminal charges or civil damages beyond the returned funds. My lawyer advised me to take it. Criminal cases were hard to win, and the emotional toll of prolonged litigation would be significant. I'd get my money back, which was the primary goal, but I wasn't sure I wanted just the money anymore. I wanted accountability. I wanted them to face real consequences for what they'd done. Not just to me, but to the idea of family itself. They'd weaponized my love for my mother, turned it into a con, and they'd done it without hesitation. Update 1. 3 weeks after Mom's lawyer offered the settlement, I was still undecided. The money mattered, but something about letting them buy their way out of consequences felt wrong. Then something happened that made my decision easier. My girlfriend, the one I'd been shopping for at the mall that day, sat me down one evening. She'd been quiet about the whole situation, supportive but not intrusive. Now she looked uncomfortable. She asked if we could talk about what this meant for us, for our future. I didn't understand at first. Then she explained. She'd been planning to propose to me, had bought a ring and everything. But watching me go through this, seeing how my family operated, she was scared. Not of me, but of what being legally tied to me might mean. If my mother could fabricate cancer and steal my life savings, what else might happen? Would my sister come after us next? Would there be other crises, other manipulations? It hurt to hear, but I couldn't blame her. I wouldn't want to marry into this disaster either. She wasn't breaking up with me, she clarified. She loved me, but the proposal was on hold indefinitely. She needed to see how this resolved and whether I could actually establish boundaries with my family. That conversation clarified everything. Mom and my sister hadn't just stolen money. They'd damaged my ability to build a future. They'd made me a liability. I told my lawyer to reject the settlement. I wanted full restitution plus documented damages, including interest, legal fees, and compensation for the emotional distress and reputational harm. I also wouldn't agree to drop any potential criminal charges. If the prosecutor wanted to move forward, that was their decision, not mine. Mom's lawyer came back angry, said I was being unreasonable. I was destroying my family over money. My lawyer reminded him that Mom had destroyed the family when she committed fraud. The negotiations stalled. Meanwhile, the investigation by local authorities was progressing. A detective contacted me, asked me to come in for an interview. I brought all my documentation. The detective was thorough, professional. She told me that while fraud cases between family members were complicated, the premeditation here was clear. The fake diagnosis, the coordination with my sister, the immediate shopping spree. It showed intent. She couldn't promise charges, but she was building a case. My sister finally contacted me through a mutual cousin. She wanted to meet in person. Just the two of us. I agreed, but only in a public place. We met at a coffee shop. She looked terrible. Thinner, dark circles under her eyes. She sat down across from me and immediately started crying. She said she was sorry. She'd made a terrible mistake. She'd been drowning in debt, facing foreclosure, and when Mom suggested the plan, she'd convinced herself it wasn't really stealing. I had savings. I'd be fine. They'd needed it more. I asked how much of the $40,000 she'd gotten. She admitted Mom had given her $15,000. She'd used it to save her house from foreclosure and pay off her highest interest credit cards. So you got $15,000 of my money, I said. Where's the other $25,000? She didn't know exactly. Mom had spent some, kept the rest. My sister claimed she'd thought Mom actually needed treatment for something. Maybe not cancer, but some condition. She realized too late that the whole thing was a scam. I asked if she was willing to testify to that, to make a formal statement to the police. She hesitated. That would implicate Mom more deeply, could lead to serious charges. I told her I didn't care. She needed to decide if she was going to protect the person who'd used her as an accomplice or start trying to make this right. She left without answering. 2 days later, my lawyer called. My sister had contacted the detective and given a statement. She'd admitted to her role, explained the coordination with Mom, and provided details about how they'd planned the fake diagnosis story. She'd also agreed to return her portion of the money, the $15,000, in monthly installments she'd work out with the court. Mom's situation became much worse after that. The prosecutor now had a cooperating witness. Mom's lawyer called mine again, desperate to settle. They offered full restitution, all legal fees, plus an additional $20,000 in damages. Mom would sign a confession of civil fraud. In exchange, I'd have to provide a victim impact statement requesting leniency if criminal charges were filed. My lawyer said it was the best offer I'd get. Criminal conviction was still uncertain, and trials took years. This way I'd get $60,000 relatively quickly, and Mom would have a civil judgment against her that proved what she'd done. I took it, not because I forgave her, but because I was tired. The anger had burned through me for months, and what remained was just exhaustion. Update 2. The settlement was finalized in January, almost 7 months after that 2 a.m. phone call. Mom signed the agreement in her lawyer's office. I wasn't there. My lawyer handled it. The money was transferred in 2 installments, the second one coming from Mom selling some investments. The criminal case moved forward despite the civil settlement. The prosecutor charged Mom with theft by deception and financial exploitation. My sister received a lesser charge in exchange for her cooperation. Both cases were resolved through plea deals. Mom got 2 years probation, community service, and mandatory financial counseling. My sister got 1 year probation. No jail time, which disappointed me initially. But my lawyer explained that first-time offenders in nonviolent cases rarely saw prison, especially when restitution had been paid. The convictions themselves were the punishment. Mom now had a criminal record. It would follow her. The family fallout was permanent. Half of my relatives stopped speaking to me, called me vindictive and cruel, said I destroyed my mother's life over money. The other half quietly reached out to say they'd suspected Mom had money issues for years, that she'd borrowed from others and never repaid them. My aunt told me Mom had pulled a similar but smaller scam on her 5 years ago, claiming she needed money for emergency car repairs, then buying expensive jewelry the next week. Apparently, I wasn't the first victim, just the biggest. My sister and I haven't spoken since her statement to police. I don't know if we ever will. Some things break too completely to fix. Mom tried to contact me once, a few months after her sentencing. She left a voicemail saying she understood I was angry, but she hoped eventually I'd forgive her. She was my mother. We were blood. Family was supposed to be forever. I deleted the message without finishing it. My girlfriend and I are still together. She saw me establish boundaries, watched me refuse to be manipulated by guilt and obligation. 3 months ago, she proposed. We're getting married next spring. Mom won't be invited. Neither will my sister. I've had people tell me that's harsh, that everyone makes mistakes, that I should be the bigger person. But here's what I learned through all of this. Being family doesn't give you the right to destroy someone. It doesn't grant immunity from consequences. And forgiveness isn't mandatory just because you share DNA. My mother looked me in the eye and lied about having cancer. She weaponized my love for her to steal my future. She did it deliberately, with planning and coordination. And when caught, her only regret was getting caught. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I'm rebuilding my savings now. It'll take years to get back what I lost, plus the additional costs from the legal battle. But I'm doing it debt-free, with clear boundaries, and without family members who view me as a resource to be exploited. The $40,000 was the most expensive lesson I've ever learned. But it taught me something valuable. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you need. And walking away from people who hurt you isn't cruelty. It's survival. I sleep fine at night now. I don't wonder if the next phone call will be another crisis, another manipulation. I don't calculate how much I could afford to lose the next time someone I love needs help. I'm free of that. And that freedom, it turns out, is worth more than any amount of money. Some people will say I overreacted, that I should have handled this privately, kept it in the family, found a way to move past it without involving authorities and lawyers and permanent estrangement. Those people have never been looked in the eye by someone they trusted completely and systematically robbed, while that person cried fake tears about dying. I don't regret anything I did. Not the investigation, not the police report, not the lawsuit, not the boundaries that cost me half my extended family. My mother made her choices. I made mine, and I'd make them all again. If you like this story, please like this video and subscribe us for more such real-life-based stories. Thanks in advance.